Tomorrow night, 24 hours from right now, in this hour, President Trump will deliver a primetime address to all Americans surrounding what is now a crisis at our southern border. And that brings us to our first Hannity Watch tonight. As we speak, a partial government shutdown is still in effect as Democrats bury their heads in the sand, close their eyes, and pretend that America's borders are totally safe and secure. They are not. In fact, Democrats are adamantly refusing to give Border Patrol agents the tools they desperately need and are asking for. And that is a strategic wall on the southern border. But now even one top Democrat tonight admitting that President Trump does, in fact, have the power to build the wall without any congressional approval whatsoever. Take a look.
Does President Trump have the ability, have the authority to declare a national emergency, have the military build his wall?
Well, unfortunately, the short answer is yes. There is a provision in law that says the president can declare an emergency. It's been done a number of times, but primarily it's been done to build facilities in Afghanistan and Iraq. And in this case, I think the president would be wide open to a court challenge saying, where's the emergency?
All right, where's the emergency? We will answer that question. Pay close attention to all the following statistics that, of course, the hate Trump media, hate Trump Democrats, they are not telling you. They are ignoring. Now, in the past 2 years alone, criminal aliens, they have been responsible for approximately, look at this number, 235,000 violations of the law, including 4,000 homicides, 30,000 sex crimes, and get this, over 100,000 violent assaults. In just 2018, 17,000 individuals with criminal records, they were apprehended at the border, and the crisis goes much, much deeper. In towns and cities all across this country, we know about the opioid crisis. 300 Americans are killed every single week from heroin. 90% of that heroin is flooding across our southern border. And that death toll, by the way, is equal, think about this, to the number of American troops killed every week in Vietnam during the year 1968. That was the war's deadliest year. And over a 10-year period, total Americans killed from illegal drugs coming across the southern border will be nearly 3 times higher than the total number of U.S. troops killed in Vietnam. There is your crisis by any definition. But don't expect to see this on any other network. Of course, Donald Trump wants something, they're just against it. Instead of reporting facts and truth, they seem content with just trashing Trump voters, blaming us for seeing the truth. Over on fake news, CNN, Rick Wilson first trashed Trump supporters, suggesting that we didn't have teeth. Now he's saying that we're just not sophisticated enough. We're not smart enough to understand the issue involving border security. Take a look.
The idea of a physical wall, Donald Trump loves selling this to his base. And again, these are people who are not sophisticated. They are not bright. They do not understand the complexities and the realities.
Okay, here we go again now with, here we go with condescending to us in the Trump base. We're just about to
the shoe fits, you're going to wear it, pal.
And that's why we want a wall, right, Rick?
Steve,
I just
want to get one more with that is Donald Trump's target audience. He is a con man who works unsophisticated people very successfully.
You know what?
And while fake news, CNN insults our intelligence, conspiracy TV, MSNBC, they're referring to Americans, we the people, as cowards. Take a look.
The concern of a lot of Republicans is they can see that Trump is driving them off the cliff, but they look at the short term and they fear not the general election in 2020, but they fear the potential that Trump and a Trump-backed candidate could primary them and beat them before they even got to November. Is that fear, panic, cowardice, stupidity? It's all those things, but it is the thing that I think has been the governing dynamic in Republican politics for the last year.
Remember last week I was talking about, well, we have the hate Trump Democrats, you have the hate Trump media, and I told you about the information crisis. I went into great detail. Personal attacks won't ever stop this show from reporting truth. And for us and most Americans, this is not a political game. We're now seeing this is about life and death. This is about innocent, brave, law-abiding Americans and legal immigrants literally dying because our borders are not secure. Now, we know the story of Officer Singh. He was gunned down by an illegal immigrant just after Christmas. He was just put to rest this weekend. His 5-month-old son, he will never know his father. That's life and death. And the person responsible for that heinous act had a criminal track record. He should have been turned over to ICE. He should have been deported. But in California, well, they have sanctuary cities, but the whole state is a sanctuary state. And those policies prevented that from happening. Government policies are now literally aiding and abetting law-breaking and paving the way for future crimes. When did you think the government would act and aid and abet criminals? And like every other Democrat, you have the outgoing governor of California, Jerry Brown, burying his head in the sand. But really, he ought to be taking responsibility. Take a look.
The San Marcos County Sheriff has come out, pretty critical of the sanctuary state policies that you signed into law in 2017. What do you make of that criticism? And do you think that perhaps a side effect of those laws is that more bad actors might fall through the cracks?
No, I don't think so. He was arrested and brought into jail before the sanctuary law was even enacted. So ICE, the immigration people could have gone out and gotten him. The police or the sheriff could have told the immigration service. I think people now are looking to blame somebody because of the terrible things that happened, but it had nothing to do with the law of California.
No, sanctuary states literally prevent criminals that would normally have been handed over to ICE. It makes it illegal. That means they go free. And what happened to Officer Singh is all too common an occurrence. Now, have you heard the name of Pierce Corcoran? On December the 29th, he was killed by a suspected illegal immigrant driving without a license, without insurance, and on the wrong side of the highway. Pierce was only 22 years old. Tonight on this show, his parents will join us right after our opening monologue. Also tonight, the American people and the public needs to start asking some really important, tough questions. How many of our fellow citizens have been murdered because of unsecured borders? Now, if that's not a national emergency, I don't know how we would ever define one. And by the way, this emergency is taking place on both sides of the border. Here are the facts. 60,000 inadmissible or illegal immigrants are turned away from our borders every single month. A record number of migrants are overwhelming American detention facilities, causing them to be dangerously overcrowded. And 1 out of every 3 migrant women, those that try to make the trip to our southern border, sadly, tragically, evil occurs and they are assaulted sexually. And last month alone, 20,000 children were smuggled or trafficked right here into the United States. And thousands more have died on that arduous, difficult, hard journey across the border. President Trump has long warned about this incredibly serious situation, but what was Nancy Pelosi's reaction to these devastating facts? Well, according to Fox News, during a briefing with our Homeland Security Secretary, Nielsen, Pelosi said, "I reject your facts," to which Nielsen responded, quote, "These aren't my facts, these are the facts." During recent border negotiations. All right, so this weekend, the Vice President, Pence, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, well, they didn't bother to show up for the Vice President. Instead, Nancy and Chucky, I guess they were too busy. They sent their aides to negotiate with the Vice President of the United States. That's how seriously they're taking what is now a deadly issue. And then, of course, arrogantly offering, oh, we'll give you $1 for the border wall. Well, if that's her attitude, Nancy Pelosi's, is she going to offer the families who lost loved ones any financial compensation? Is that how we now define compassionate liberalism? What does she have to say to all the angel moms and angel dads and kids? What will she say when Officer Singh's son is 16 years old or looking to get into college? We showed you the numbers. Drugs are pouring across our borders, leading to even more death and more destruction. This is not about the 98% of people that want a better life because they come from countries of poverty and want opportunity and freedom that we all take for granted. We're not worried about them. We're just asking they come legally. It's about the 2%, those that are committing crimes, human trafficking, drug trafficking, violent offenders. But even the thousands of good, honest immigrants hoping to cross our border because they do want a better life they are trafficked themselves. Human trafficking. Assaults happen. Even killed during that dangerous trek all through Mexico. Without a doubt, this is a national emergency. It's time to build the wall. The president is right to fight to protect American lives. But how do you negotiate with people? They won't even sit down. They send their aides to negotiate with the vice president. People who won't even recognize that the problem exists. People that reject truth and simple facts and care more about political optics than the lives and the well-being of Americans. And while Democrats that try their best to ignore a very real, serious crisis, continue to obsess about one of their favorite fantasies, All they want to talk about, Donald Trump, impeachment, Donald Trump, impeachment, which, as we explained last week, is not going to happen. Now, in the Senate, they won't get 2/3 of Republican senators. All they will do is distract and divide the American people, and they won't be serving their constituents. Less than one day after being sworn in, freshman Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib went on a vulgar rant vowing to impeach the MFer, the president. Over the weekend, she doubled down on her idiotic remarks, once again calling for his impeachment, and said that Trump has, quote, met his match. The radical far left, the new Congress is off to a great start. Their new rising star, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is continuing to try and sell Americans on this far left radical vision for America, portraying socialism as some sort of path to paradise, arguing that we shouldn't let facts get in the way. Really? Take a look.
When people hear the word socialism, they think Soviet Union, Cuba, Venezuela. Is that what you have in mind?
Of course not. What we have in mind, and my policies most closely resemble what we see in the UK, in Norway, in Finland, in Sweden.
The Washington Post recently awarded you 4 Pinocchios.
Oh my goodness.
For misstating some statistics about Pentagon spending.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
It's only a $21 trillion mistake. Why pay attention to little facts and figures? So ask yourself, why is she so afraid to explain how to pay for it? Because the only way to pay for it is with your money. And she wants to raise taxes. She's already thrown her support behind, get this, a 70% tax rate for American citizens. But remember, the bottom 50% of wage earners pay less than 3% of income taxes already. And by the way, keep in mind, she'll definitely need a lot more of your money if she wants to accomplish the radical agenda. So don't be fooled. Paying for massive entitlements like government-run health care, government-mandated climate shaming, government-funded college for all, it will require massive, heavy taxes on all Americans, not just the millionaires and billionaires that are so often demonized. Interestingly, even The View's Whoopi Goldberg had some pretty choice words for the freshman congresswoman's big plans. Let's take a look.
I would encourage you to sit still for a minute and learn the job. Because there are people in that party who have been working their tails off for this country.
They know a lot.
And they know a lot. And you could learn some stuff. Before you start pooping on people and what they've done, you got to do something too.
And by the way, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, you're welcome on this program. If you want to have a real debate, we'll give you the full hour. I'll even give you 3 bonus hours of my radio show on 600 of the biggest stations in the country. But don't hold our breath, shall we? All right, of course, she first needs to denounce her many radical followers for what are disgusting attacks on the House Minority Whip Steve Scalise. Over the weekend, Congressman Scalise, he was hit with a wave of extremely disturbing comments from supporters of Ocasio-Cortez during a Twitter exchange on tax reform. Now, with some sending violent messages about, remember, the attempted assassination of GOP Congressman by a far-left radical, James Hodgkinson, in 2017. Scalise was shot, nearly died, seriously injured. Comments including, quote, kick his cane, snipe his ass. Wow. And not following that incident, Congressman Scalise tweeted, quote, well, happy to continue this debate on the floor of the People's House, but it's clearly not productive to engage here with some of your radical followers. Hashtag stay classy. Congressman Scalise will join us later in the show. Now, of course, this is all a part of the Democratic Party's hard turn to the left. A lot of this now is based on hatred. A lot of it is now obsession, fixation, every second, minute, hour of every day. Hate Trump. One of the champions of the far left, Elizabeth Warren, she's now seeing her 2020 presidential hopes wither right before her eyes during a visit to Iowa over the weekend. The progressive, hopeful from Massachusetts was again pressed on her now infamous DNA debacle. And she's now come up with a brand new excuse for her Native American lies, telling the audience, quote, tribal citizenship is very different from ancestry. Senator, why don't you just stop while you're ahead and admit it? You were caught deceiving voters, your employers and your friends and everybody else. Now even her own congressional colleagues, they seem to be taking notice. New report from Politico, Democratic senators, they are keeping their distance and withholding any endorsements, especially as former Vice President, crazy Uncle Joe Biden, is reportedly on the verge of making his final decision on 2020. We'll have a lot more later in the show on all this.